Hello everybody! Today I'll show you how to paint these mini gouache landscapes. I'm using my Reeves gouache paints in this video, which I bought from Amazon. These were pretty affordable and have turned out to be a good beginner set for entering the world of gouache painting. But now let's get started, and I'm starting everything by painting two of these background layers that we can then start to cover with all our details. I was inspired by these peachy and army green tones today, so those were the two base colors we're starting with. I'll write the colors I'm using to the screen. Some of these required a bit of mixing to get the tone I was looking for, but you could of course change things up and use any kind of color palette you like. If you're more familiar with watercolors, gouache paints are just a bit more opaque, so you can layer them and create all kinds of fun shapes and effects. You'll need to use quite a lot of paint to get even and opaque layers, so if you feel like the end result looks patchy, you might want to add paint and reduce the amount of water in your brush. I let these base layers completely dry before starting the actual painting process, and I chose to start from the green one. I had some kind of a flower field in mind for this, so I drew some quick guidelines for myself with a pencil and then started to paint these brown mountains to the distance. You don't need to be super precise with gouache paints, which is something I love about this medium. If you make a mistake, you're always able to cover it with more paint, so it takes some pressure off from the whole painting experience. I feel like with this style of painting, you can get really far with just random dotting motions and thin strokes, so it doesn't require that much skill either. Layering the colors and changing the tones a bit is the key in my opinion, and creates a more dynamic and interesting end result. I made the green tones darker towards the bottom of this painting and also increased the sizes of these red flowers so it looks like they are closer to us in the picture. To get these flowers show up bright, you might need to go over them a few times with the red paint, or at least that was the case with my gouache paints. The less water you use, the more opaque your color will be on the paper. It helps to have a super thin brush to create small strokes for the grass, and it might still be a bit difficult when the brush is loaded with paint. I found it helpful to add a bit more water on the brush whenever I wanted to get these super even and thin strokes, but in the end all the strokes will even out and you won't see the ones that ended up looking too thick. I finished this painting with some brighter dots with that same peachy color and also pure white. That added a nice finishing touch to it in my opinion. I was also wondering if I wanted to add some clouds to the sky, but eventually decided against it and just left it with this even peachy tone. That was all for the first painting, and now let's move on to the second one. So I started this one by painting these light mountains all over our base color. I went with this peachy tone that was only a bit darker than the background because I didn't want all of these to stand out that much in the finished painting. Then I started to add some darker brown and peach tones, always to the other side of the mountains to add that shadowy effect. And I also tried to keep my strokes here pretty rough to add that more angular rocky effect. Then I wanted to add some contrast here in the down left corner, so I started to paint these green areas between the mountains to resemble some forest. I didn't want them to show up too much, so I kind of tried to fade them into the background and be very mindful of where I was adding them. I also lightened up the sky a bit with white paint, so there would be some kind of variation in the peachy tones. Then we'll get to the fun part of this painting, which Bob Ross would call the bravery test part. So I basically wanted to paint some hanging tree branches from the top corner to pretty much cover up what we just painted on the background. I started with these dark brown strokes, and don't worry if all of them don't turn out perfect. You can always cover the ones up that look a bit too thick or something. Making thin strokes with very sharp angles works the best in my opinion whenever you're trying to create this tree branch effect. And just keep adding these in a way that pleases your imagination. After the dark branches were ready, I started to go over them with pure white paint to create these small flowers. I tried to make small groups of these flowers and made some of them bigger, and then some of them just ended up being a small white dot. When I was happy with the amount of these flowers, I tried adding some green leaves here, but I didn't really like how it looked, so I only threw a few of them here and there. Then I added some tiny dark spots in the middle of these biggest flowers, and after that, our second painting is finally done. I really hope you liked this simple painting video and maybe found it relaxing. Let me know if you'd like to see more of these gouache painting videos in the future. And if this was your first time here on my channel, subscribing would always be highly appreciated. Thank you guys so much for watching as always. I hope you're having an amazing day or night wherever you are, and see you in my next one. Bye bye!